have some news. Right before we recorded, Woj tweeted that Bogdanovic signed a 4-year, $68 million extension with the Hawks. He will decline his $18 million player option as part of this deal. Before I get Grant's thoughts on it, my one takeaway from this that has to do with overarching free agency, it's going to suck again. There's just like all the good free agents, or we don't really see stars hit free agents anymore. James Harden might still be there, and there's the Houston bugaboo. Who knows what the fuck Kyrie will do, but we're just pulling like top 10, 15 names off the board at this point. What do you think of the overall deal for 68 for Bogdanovic?
I think there's no sticker shock at all. That's my first reaction. Is that seems like a reasonable deal for him. I just it's a weird time. Like this, I was, if you told me there was breaking news, or I'm sure everyone that heard you say there was breaking news would not have expected it to be a
Zion out for the season would probably be the one everyone's expecting.
Yeah, a declined player option, and then a new 4-year deal. So, I mean, we've talked about this off air. It seems fine to me. I think Bogdanovic is a good player. I think even with Murray on the team, he still fills a role when he's healthy. That's been a big question. I guess if you're critical of this deal, you're probably concerned about his health, but it's not like, because what has he played? 43 games this year, 63 last year, 44 before that.
The knee stuff is still it always feels like it's cropping up with him.
Right. And it seems like it's knees. Yeah, it's just kind of chronic. He's going to miss time. But like when he's on the floor, he's just a good player. He's over 40% from deep this year, 38.6 for his career. He's just scored like metronomically in the, mid-teens for his scoring average every year of his career, basically, other than his rookie season. That's just what he gives you. Good passer, smart player, has the size to defend credibly. I think he's slipped defensively as he's, gotten through some more injuries and gotten deeper into his carer, but I think it makes sense.
He's old too. He's 30. It's just why I say that as someone who's 34, which is like, he's old in basketball years.
For sure. But you're not committing $25 million a year to this guy. And I think it's a salary that makes sense for his role, but the sort of the fallout for the Hawks, down the roster and down the, balance sheets, I think is the more interesting angle. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. And I will say he is so critical. I don't think they could. A lot of people were wondering whether they would lose him because of the cap sheet stuff. Once you traded Kevin Huerter, you couldn't lose him. He is so important to your 3-point volume and overall spacing. Their effective field goal percentage this year improves by 3.2 percentage points with him on the court. That is the highest increase on the team, and it rates the 90th percentile of the league. And he just does wonders for their spacing. And I think he's even more important if you're trying to make lineups without Trey that have DeJounte Murray work. And especially with the way John Collins has played this year, that's only increased his importance to the team as well. And you're going to play a big in Capella or Onyeka Okongwu who's not going to space the floor. So actually, I'm fine with the number. I mean, this takes him through his age 33, 34 season. There's always a risk there, but $18 million, 3 years from now is going to be what of the salary cap? Maybe 15% of it.
Yeah.
The projected salary cap in what's going to be the second year of this deal, if he keeps it average, we haven't seen what the raises are. It's going to be 12% of the salary cap by year 2. If he's at a flat 18 million, that's nothing for a guy who's this good. Yeah. What is interesting though, so if we pencil him in for $18 million next year, the Hawks, their team salary, this is including, Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando, and Vit Krejci all have non-guaranteed deals. They're so small, I'm just going to include them because if you get rid of them, you're going to have to fill most of those spots with minimum roster charges that come close to these $2 million hits anyway. You're at plus your first round pick, which right now is projected to fall just outside the lottery at number 15. You're looking at $171.4 million. The tax line right now is projected to be at 162. So are the Hawks a team, before even spending their mid-level exception, that are going to pay the tax? My gut says no. Tony Ressler can say, I think he went on the radio one point, like, we're absolutely going to be willing to pay the tax. No, you're not.
Why isn't Kevin Huerter on the team if you're willing?
Right. If you're willing to pay the tax, where the fuck is Kevin Huerter? He's killing it for Sacramento is where he is. So my reaction to this is it was absolutely unequivocally a need to keep you non-negotiable. You needed Bogdanovic moving forward. One of John Collins, Clint Capella, or DeAndre Hunter's getting traded over the offseason. My guess would be maybe they prefer to move Capella they prefer to move Collins with 3 years left on his deal. They do have Onyeka Okongwu, unless you really trust him to be your big of the future and you're high on Jalen Johnson and you're thinking we can kind of get one of these cheap bigs to plug a bunch of minutes. So maybe you look at moving Capella. Like this to me screams, if anyone thought John Collins was going to be moved as a salary dump, it now feels more likely than ever. They've changed head coaches. They've turned over the front office. You've now extended Bogdanovic, which again, smart. And I wouldn't just trade. We're both on the same page with John Collins for the most part. I wouldn't trade him for nothing. I actually think that he could still be a really good player. Maybe, as you mentioned off air, we're just describing too much to, well, if that finger, it's got to be the finger. Like he'll eventually be fine. Maybe we're wrong there. I'm officially at the point, even though John Collins has been in trade rumors for roughly 2 decades without being moved, I do not think he'll be on the Hawks next season. I will actually be shocked at this point if he's on Atlanta next year.
Yeah. I mean, all signs have pointed to him being moved, and he hasn't. And as you were talking, I was looking up, like, maybe the 3-point shot's coming around. No, 22.7% in March, 22.2% in February. He's got 1 month over 30% this year.
I haven't looked in the past few games, but his minutes are down under Quinn Snyder too, right? Like that's been something.
Yes, he's down. He's playing 24.8 minutes per game in March. Almost, I think. Yeah, Snyder's been at the helm for all of March, and a couple February games. Yeah, this is the lowest he's played, scoring 9 points a game in March. That he's being minimized, and like it's hard to, it's just the correct decision for a guy that's just not going to threaten anybody from the perimeter, and like, has not been valuable when he can't do that. So I think we have both been kind of of the same mind that like it's like, why isn't he a positive value guy? Like, why can't you? And maybe just like the Hawks now are going to have to be in a position where we just need to get his salary off the books. Forget the fact that like he's not helping us. We can't pay this much for this 500 team. So they have to give up an asset to get off him, which like they're not exactly long on those because of the Murray trade and really that's the main thing. But like they're not in a position where they can be paying to get off of bad money. That's not.
If you need to give up an asset to get rid of him, just keep him. You can't.
Yeah, maybe right. Maybe just hope that his finger heals and he does get back to just being a league average 3-point shooter, even if it's low volume. Maybe that's the play. And maybe you just wait it out. I don't know. But I agree to back up. I agree with you that if they're gonna, I think they do need to make a move now to get cheaper, and moving him into somebody's cap space makes the most sense.
Do you think to wrap up on this, do you think that they fucked up here, or because by not even trying to pair him with Capella, and so you're limiting one of his biggest strengths as a screener inherently, but then also getting another ball dominant guard in DeJounte Murray, was this eminently predictable, or is it more so on it was actually worth trying out because John Collins is good and in theory is very scalable offensively, and playing the 4 is going to be his best defensive position anyway. So do the Hawks deserve some criticism here for not moving him sooner?
I mean, I think if there were deals out there, well, first of all, like, I don't think the thinking was flawed, because if he's making, like he shot 36.4% from deep last year. If he's shooting that well from 3 this year, even if he's on, he's never been a high volume guy, but if he's taking like 3 threes a game and hitting at that rate, I don't think we're having this conversation. One, because maybe they would have been able to trade him for positive value if that's just the decision they were going to make. Because the difference between 25% and 36% is difficult to overstate, like in terms of 3-point percentage, because like it's massive. So if I don't think I can put a lot of this on the Hawks unless they had some golden opportunity they passed on, because just if you assume you're getting the version of John Collins that has existed for the last like 4 years, even since he was a rookie, he was 34% as a rookie. That'd be fine. You could get away with that. I just don't know how they could have predicted, unless it was super obvious that finger injury was going to make it so that he's just never going to be able to shoot again. I don't know how they could have seen a dip like this coming. Cause I mean, we haven't looked this up, but like year over year, who has lost their shot like this in the past,
So that part was unpredictable, but I think knowing that you saw some of the struggles were keeping him at higher usage and more involved before this year, as soon as you traded DeJounte Murray, I think there should have been more of a commitment to moving him rather than seeing if that could work, because you kind of already knew the returns were spotty with Clint Capella, just in terms of John Collins' happiness and usage. Just even if he was efficient, happiness and usage. He'd hinted at saying some things, and then to add DeJounte Murray into the fold, I get the appeal. of
Yeah.
DeJounte Murray. But at that point, it was if you weren't going to move Collins as part of that deal, you needed to move him as part of another deal. And I don't know if the front office fluctuation, like in that leadership being in Lurch, contributed to that at all. And we don't know what offers were at the deadline. We know he was going to Phoenix. We don't know what they were going to give up to get him.
Yeah.
But like now, the way he's played, I would be shocked if they get more than like a very heavily protected first round pick and then just like a cheaper collection of players.
I mean, I kind of think, we've mostly been on Team Collins if we're taking sides between him and the Hawks. But like I think he's kind of an inherently tricky player to integrate because he's not
Yeah.
really a 4 and he's not really a 5. It would be great if he could defend as a 5 because then you get a lot of really interesting offensive looks, or you would have if he could still shoot. Like that's hard. And then the other thing is, I think maybe under discussed is the Capella contract looks pretty bad. But even at the time, you're thinking we got to find a way to defend the rim and give Trey like a lob catching big guy, and Capella does those things, so it's sort of defensible there. The Hawks have made a lot of decisions that like there are decent justifications for that. Just now that we're on the other side of so many of them, it's the total picture is just way iffier than they probably expected.
And the other thing too is that we talked about this on the Bleacher Report live stream the other day. They're actually killing it when Collins, Capella,
Right.
Hunter, Murray, and Trey are on the court. And so like that kind of just disproves, even with Collins not being at his best. Imagine if he was even at like 60% of what he was, or 70%. They'd probably be even that much better. And so maybe I'm overstating that, but it's weird that we spent most of the time, the Bogdanovic extension, talking about John Collins. I do think though this actually says more about his future than it might actually say about Bogdanovic's.
Yeah, I mean, last thing too that you just made me think of is maybe this is the Collins' future, and then viewing that in conjunction with Bogdanovic being back for 4 more years. There is a scenario where like now this Quinn Snyder coach team has a chance to look quite a bit more like the Utah team that he was pretty successful with, because you're going to have a rim rolling big, and then you're going to be kind of undersized everywhere else because you had like Ingles and Royce O'Neal playing together a lot, and Bojan Bogdanovic next to 2 smaller guards. And so if you could theoretically, I don't know if Bogdan Bogdanovic could hold up for starters minutes, but you could play him with Murray and with Trey, and Hunter's your 4. And now you kind of have a weird Jazz-esque look where there's more shot creators. There's kind of a fulcrum in the middle that catches lobs and sets screens. I think it certainly at least feels like the type of team that Snyder would be comfortable coaching if you take Collins out of the mix and get a shooter in there. So that's just another facet to it. I think the more I think about it, the more that like checks out as kind of the logical reasoning behind the re-signing.